I'm going to be painting a robin in watercolours. I use these Cotman watercolours. It's a really nice set. They've got warm and cool primary colours, so you've got quite a nice range. It's also got a yellow ochre, which I love, and burnt sienna. The set that I will actually be using looks a little bit more like this. It's a little bit old and very well used. I'll also be using a range of brushes. Until I actually start, I kind of work intuitively, so I'm not sure which brushes, but I try to use brushes as large as I can get away with, because it prevents me from getting too detailed. I'll be using a 2H pencil to make my initial drawing, and maybe an HB pencil, but I won't go any softer than that because the drawing isn't really the thing at the moment. It's more about the painting. And then I've got an extra soft Pitt oil-based pencil, which I love actually over graphite, because it's not shiny, it's just black, it's not shiny, so I really like those to use, and I use those at the end of the sketch just to add in a bit more detail. So I've got an image that I'm working from. I'm going to work portrait, so again, as always, I've left it too long. I'm a bit out of practice. I'm hoping this will change and I'll get back to my drawing practice as soon as possible, on actually a daily basis, which is what I really need to do in order to give me the confidence to just be able to sketch. I find that I worry about it and then I don't actually do it. I put it off, don't do it for quite a while because I haven't done it for a while. So whilst I'm talking, I'm able to unlock that part of my brain, stop it thinking, and just get on with the drawing. So that's quite useful for me. Music can also do that, I find, as well. That critical side of your brain that's constantly second guessing you. If you talk, it doesn't do it. Well, not with my brain anyway. My brain can't do two things at once like that. Sometimes I do need to concentrate though, so I won't talk the whole way through. Just trying to make sure that for a robin, the eye is in the right place. It always feels quite far back, and they're quite large, the eyes of a robin as well, by comparison with other birds, I think. Little beak slightly curves over at the end there. Slightly curved, very fine. And the red or orange of his chest, or hers, actually comes around the outside of the eye as well. Just mapping it out at the moment. And the eye's a bit too oval. It's quite important to get the drawing right, because if the drawing isn't right, then the painting won't be right either. So it's important that I get the drawing as accurate as I can. I'm not going for photo real, I never am, but I do want it to look like a robin. And I think if you're worried about your drawing, or if you don't feel that you can make the drawing that you want to be able to make, then I'd just start with tracing. Actually, just make a really light tracing, just mapping out where the different components of the bird are, and then allow yourself to just concentrate on the painting rather than worrying about getting the drawing right. The alternative to that, of course, would be to focus on the drawing and making sure that you get an accurate drawing if that's something that you feel you want to do. I really like drawings that nobody else could draw. I think actually photoreal drawings, as lovely as they are, and as skillful as they are, if you're doing it right, anybody who can do that can make exactly the same drawing or painting. Whereas if you're drawing sort of from your heart, from your own personality, nobody else can make those drawings. People could, of course, copy you, but I can't copy my own drawing and get it exactly the same. most people I think would want to draw as unique, like their unique selves. This little log that his branch that he's sitting on actually covers up his foot a little bit, so it's a bit difficult for me to see what's going on there. And it's kind of clinging onto this one on this side. Such tiny little fine feet. Okay, I think I've got the drawing. He actually seems to sort of lean a bit more this way. Our tendency is always to straighten things up, so he's actually leaning a bit more that way, but I'm just going to let it be. Do a little bit of texture. I think the red chest is actually a little bit higher than that. Got a little bit of texture around here. Okay, I'm going to go in with some paint now. Do I go for my large brush? It's quite a large painting, it's quite a large image, so maybe I should. I'm going to start with some sort of burnt umber. I'm going to mix that with a bit of Payne's grey in there. I'm going to mix it with this Payne's grey. Although it is quite red actually, it's at the top of his head, so a little bit of burnt sienna as well. Quite try and keep it wet, lots of water. I think that's the secret to watercolour painting actually. You kind of start with lots of water, nice washes, and then tighten up as you go on. Vital to have a cloth or something to stop me from sticking my brush in my mouth to dry it off, which is a very bad habit, very undesirable. I just want to paint into the beak, I don't want that to bleed into the background, so just a little bit of texture. His legs are quite a reddy brown. And then they splotch there. In the image, the tail is actually rather out of focus. It's a sort of grey brown there. Because we've got the underside of his tail, this is a grey brown. Just going to add a little bit of texture to the branch, although I'm not particularly interested in it, so I'm not too concerned about putting any focus on that. Then I am actually going to have to leave it to dry now. It's now dried quite well, so I'm going to go straight in now with the red breast colour, which is obviously quite orange actually, and apparently the Robin Redbreast is called the Robin Redbreast because in the English language in the 1600s, or maybe earlier, I'm not sure, whenever they named robins Robin Redbreast, there was no word for orange, which in fact I think came over, I might be wrong about this, but I think the term orange came over with oranges. Lots of water. Some bits in this paint, I'm not sure quite what it is, probably just come out later, but the paint will gather around them if I don't get them out now, so I am going to just try and get them out. I'm not sure what it is. The paint will sort of granulate around them if I'm not careful. It really is quite an intense orange actually, this particular robin. I think we often paint them redder than they are because that's how they appear in sort of festive on festive cards and things like that. They always tend to make them a bit redder than they actually are. They are really quite orange. And these feathers are sort of just coming down. It's not a perfectly straight line where the feathers, where the orange feathers end and the lighter grey feathers begin. It's actually quite white on this particular robin, this area, so I'm just adding a little bit of texture. On this top of part of the head, trying very hard not to touch into that orange, because if I do then it'll flood in and I don't actually want that bit too. I don't mind if it does a bit in some places, but there's some shadow under his wing here, so I'm just going to add that in. So the colours I'm using are really just burnt sienna, burnt umber and Payne's grey, and then the orange for his chest with a bit of crimson alizarin in it as well. Just to take away some of the orange. So it's worth thinking about where the light comes from. It must come from this side, I think, because this side is more in shadow. Bit of texture on the head there, and the beak is actually quite dark, particularly underneath. It's got a sort of light stripe on it, but it is quite dark. And the eye is a lovely warm black, and it might just bleed in to the red. Do I mind about that? If I do, I can sort of blot it back. Do I mind? I think I do actually. I'm going to just blot that. And it's worth me making these mistakes when I'm doing these videos, because I can show you what I do to rectify them or to change them, because I might have wanted it to stay like that, but actually this occasion. So I'm just wiping my brush on a cloth and then going back over the area and just taking away the paint. I don't mind it bleeding into the in behind there, but I don't really want it to bleed into that red. So what I'm going to do is just go back, because I don't want that line there. So I'm just going to flood some orange back in, but try not to go up to the black. Just with a drier brush now, just adding a little bit more texture there to that wing. There's a little bit of wing that's showing on this side as well, so a bit more texture there. Okay, and I'll finish that off with, I'll let it dry again and see what I need next. Watercolourists, purist watercolourists would suggest that you shouldn't use white or black, but I'm not a purist. So there goes a bit of white into his eye. Oh, I tend not to use it to paint over the watercolour actually, because I just don't like the effect. But I don't think that you definitely shouldn't do it. I think it's up to you, it's up to what you think will work. So I'm going to add a little bit more detail here. Now with my pencil. Paper's still a little wet actually, so probably should wait for it to dry a bit more. I'm a little bit impatient. Everything I use has to be quite robust and forgiving, I think. Just going to outline that eye, just to give it a little bit more definition. There's quite a lot of texture around the eye as well, which I think for me is better put in with a pencil. You could put it in with paint, but that would mean I had to use a tiny little brush. And I don't like doing that. I think I've actually got a little bit of a phobia for it because I used to paint highly detailed photoreal pet portraits, which used to give me a lot of stress. So I think I've got a bit of a phobia about using a tiny brush. I'm basically just scribbling here, just creating the effect of the feathers, but it is really scribbling with purpose and intention. And this isn't a scientific illustration, it's just an illustration for one of my little ebooks, so it's fine for me to not get everything exactly accurate. But like I say, I still wanted it to look like a robin, which I think it does. But they're never really still, they'll sit and look at you, but they're always like twitching and moving a little bit, and so I don't want it to be too static. Okay, I think that's as far as I'm going to go with that one. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll follow along. Maybe have a go yourself and create your own unique drawing.